Welcome to Straight Shot Politics. Each episode will bring you in-depth discussion with experts, community leaders, and analysts who will share their insights, experiences, and predictions. From local elections to global diplomacy, we'll provide you with the tools and perspectives you'll need to navigate today's real-world landscape.
Welcome to Straight Shot Politics. I am Lisa Chafee.
And I'm Michael Nash.
Hey, Mike, on August 3rd, we had the pleasure of attending the Union County Republican Party annual Summer Farm Fest.
We did. It was a great success, and we had an awesome time meeting our elected officials, such as Secretary of State Frank LaRose,
and Treasurer Robert Sprague,
Auditor Keith Fabor, and two, not one, but two Supreme Court Justices, Pat Fisher and Dan Hawkins.
I love both of them.
These
Wonderful
guys are
men.
great. Yes.
We also spoke with Senate President Rob McCauley and our illustrious Attorney General Dave Yost and his incredibly talented wife, Darlene.
I love Dave and Darlene. They are great folks. Really enjoyed spending time with them.
Yes, me too. This will be one of several episodes. We had a great time interviewing our guests, and we hope you enjoy listening. So, Mike and Jim, we have been graced with the presence of our current Secretary of State, Frank LaRose. Sir, how are you?
I'm fired up. I'll tell you what, we got a big crowd out here in Union County at the Farm Fest. It's, the first Sunday in August, and we've got patriots that are out here to talk about how are we going to make our communities, our state, and our nation stronger and more prosperous. So it's a good afternoon.
We are blessed indeed, absolutely.
Yes.
I had to get a word in edgewise because you were just going.
I know, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My dad always called me Mouth of the South.
There we are.
So you've had some exciting things going on the last couple years with election integrity. Yeah. So give us a brief synopsis and some highlights.
Well, Ohio's been doing it right, and that's something we can be proud of. We take it seriously when we say we want it to be easy to vote and hard to cheat. You don't have to pick one or the other. We have convenience in Ohio. It's easy to vote in Ohio. In fact, if you're not voting in Ohio, you've just decided not to because we've made it really easy.
Right.
But we also want it to be hard to cheat. And again, you don't have to choose one or the other. We check IDs. We don't apologize for that. We take dead people off the voter rolls. We audit every election with a full hand count audit after each election. We count the paper ballots and make sure they match up with the electronic count. We have bipartisan elections administration. Not every state's like this, but every county board of elections is half D's and half R's. Every voting location you go into, half D's and half R's. We make sure that only American citizens can be registered voters. And we check. We don't just take your word for it. We check with both state and federal databases. And when it comes to lawsuits, you heard me talking about this because the tactic that the left is trying to engage in right now, they want to try to change the election laws at the courthouse because they know they won't get away with it at the state house. And so they want to sue me to try to, I'll give you this sounds ridiculous, but it's a real example from last year. In Ohio, we put on your ID if you are a non-citizen. Plenty of non-citizens have a driver's license. They're here on legal status as a student visa or a work visa or whatever else. But it says non-citizen right there on the driver's license. Well, I told the election officials that, of course, we're not going to accept a non-citizen driver's license and let somebody vote. I was sued by a guy named Mark Elias and a group we know of called the ACLU, American Criminal Liberties Union. Mm-hmm. And they said we should accept those non-citizen IDs and let them vote because, well, what if they've since naturalized and haven't been able to get an updated ID or whatever other nonsense? We had to go to court and defend that. Of course, we won that. Thank God, common sense prevailed. But that's just one out of 18 lawsuits that we had to fight last year. And so those are important things as well. Listen, I'm actually leaving early tomorrow morning to go to the National Secretary of State Conference. And I'm proud to say that when I walk into these rooms at the National Secretary of State Conference, other secretaries around the country pull me aside because they want to know, how does Ohio get our results on election night? How do we maintain an accurate and honest election? They want to follow our example, and so I'm working to try to evangelize, spread the good news, and teach other states how to do it as well as Ohio does.
Excellent.
As an elected official in Ohio, myself being a trustee, I thank you for that because I know my election is not going to be stolen from me.
And that's what it's the foundation of our very form of government, right? I have another saying. I've got a lot of my old one-liners that I share with our team. We need to run elections so well that the loser knows they lost. Every time the winner's going to know they won, they're going to go out and give a victory speech. They'll just take it for granted. But we need to do it so well, so above board, by the books, that on election night around 10:30, 11 o'clock, the losing candidate sees those results and says, you know what, it was a fair election, I came up short, and next time I'm going to try harder. That's the ideal of how democracy should work, and that's what we deliver in Ohio every
There's a
time.
keyword "should" there, because it
Yeah.
never works that way. But
Yeah.
should. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the complaints that I hear about from a lot of Republicans is we have 30 days of early voting. Now, there's the traditionalists that want 1 day, that's it.
Yep.
I understand the need for early voting, especially for people who work in hospitals. They work in 12-hour shifts. There's no way that they're going to – I know a nurse is not going to take time off on her lunch break to go vote. But she's taking care – most of them don't even get to take lunch breaks. But what would it take to cut it down to maybe a week of early voting?
So a couple things on that. First of all, the last time we reduced the early voting period in Ohio, it was my bill. Because remember, it used to be 35 days of early voting in Ohio, and it created this thing that the Democrats called Golden Week, where they could come in and register somebody and give them a ballot right then without any time to proof that and make sure it's a real address and whatever else. I sponsored the bill in the state Senate to get rid of Golden Week. That ended up going in front of the U.S. Supreme Court 2 separate times, and it was a fight. So it would have to be an act of the state legislature. But let me be very blunt about something. The early voting period is not in and of itself a vector for fraud. It doesn't create more opportunity for fraud than 1 week of early voting versus 2 weeks. It's not like the more time there is, the more time there is to commit fraud or whatever. Because the way we run early voting in Ohio is just like Election Day voting. You got to show your ID. You cast a paper ballot. The paper ballot is kept under lock and key by both Democrats and Republicans. And yes, there's 2 keys. There's a Democrat key and a Republican key to even access the room where the ballots are stored. And then we audit it after the election. So the same safeguards that go into Election Day go into that early voting period. Now, I'm a traditionalist. I would love to see it reduced, but again, that would be up to the state legislature.
Right.
But it's not something that should keep you up at night as far as an opportunity for bad guys to cheat, right? And it's because of the way we run it. Other states should follow our example. Here's some politics, though. Last year in Ohio, Republicans dominated early voting. That was the first time, and I give a lot of credit to our state chairman, who was out there telling people it's okay to vote this way, right? And reminding Republicans that we got to get your vote in the ballot box. Whether it's early voting, absentee voting, or election day, you can't sit it out. And things happen. Cars break down, kids get sick, you get called out of town for an emergency, whatever, and we can't leave any votes on the table. If you were a football coach and you knew you could score points by kicking, running, or passing, but you decided you weren't going to do any running, you were just going to do kicking and passing, that would be a foolish strategy.
Right.
We can score votes in Ohio with early voting, absentee voting, and election day voting. When we started on election day at 6:30 a.m., Republicans were already up by 250,000 votes, over 250,000, because Republicans showed up in mass, and that, well, it boded pretty well for us at the ballot last year in 2024.
It really did.
Yeah.
And I commend everybody's effort on that. All right, so let's pivot a little bit. So you're on the campaign trail again,
I
but
am.
this time
Yeah.
for the position of auditor
Yep.
of state. Why should people vote for you to be auditor?
So I'm excited about this. First of all, why auditor, right? Because
Yeah.
some people say, well, what is that? You stare at spreadsheets all day. What does an auditor do? Well, the state auditor is the constitutional office that's responsible for catching crooks that steal public money and working to make government more efficient. Those are really the 2 missions of the auditor's office. In addition, though, it's one of the seats on the redistricting commission that draws the state legislative and congressional districts. So, of course, all of us Republicans should care about that, because
Yep.
the other guys want to try to gerrymander the state. We won't let them do that.
Right.
So, catching crooks that steal public money. If anybody betrays the public trust, they belong in a jail cell, right? No question about it. And unfortunately, it happens. The part, though, that I'm really most excited about is the government efficiency component, because as much as the state auditor goes in and does a financial audit of 6,000 different entities, and so it's not just your township and your city and your village, it's every public university, park districts, library districts, how about hospitals or cultural institutions like art museums that receive public funding, a housing commission, a public transportation commission, any of those get audited for financial audit. But the auditor can also do what's called a performance audit. And that's when you come in and you find where's the BS and the waste that just needs to be cut. And this, by the way, is also why I'm so excited about our next governor. Because unfortunately in the past, state auditors, including our current one, have done really good jobs looking at finding that waste, but oftentimes the administration doesn't want to touch it. They sit that on the shelf and they pat the auditor on the head and they say, well, thank you, Mr. Auditor. You don't need to tell me how to run my Ohio Department of X or Y. I think with Vivek Ramaswamy in the governor's office, you're going to, and I know this because I talk to the man about it all the time, you're going to have a governor, when I come to him and I say, hey, the Ohio Department of Medicaid is completely FUBAR. That's a military acronym. You guys can look that up. When I come and tell him that the Department of Medicaid needs a lot of help, then, you know, he's the kind of guy that's going to roll up his sleeves and say, let's fix it. When I tell him that the Department of X or Y is 10,000 people overstaffed, he's going to say, well, we need to reduce the head count there. So that's the kind of leadership that you're going to get from Vivek Ramaswamy. That's why I'm excited for him to be governor and for me to be the next auditor of state.
Well, speaking of military, I want to thank you for your service. You said how many years you were in? You're a Green Beret, correct?
Correct, yeah. I served 7 years active duty and a number of years as a reservist since then. I'm still serving at 46 years old. Those parachute jumps kind of hurt my back now at 46.
It sucks getting old.
But I still love doing it. And so, yeah, I'm the old Green Beret in the unit at 46. I actually just got back from a couple weeks of reserve duty out on the West Coast.
I know you did.
And I love it. It's part of who I am. Being a soldier, and it's also something that I bring to work as the Secretary of State. The mentality of how I run this office is very much, well, like an Army Sergeant would do it.
Mm-hmm. So if anybody would like to help you with your campaign for auditor, how do they reach out to you to do that?
Yeah, well, first of all, as you heard me say on stage a few minutes ago, I'm asking for your prayers, the most valuable thing anybody could give me. So do pray for us and our team and our volunteers and all of that. My website, if you want to make that financial contribution, is franklarose.com, franklarose.com. Pretty easy to remember. And then I'm on all the different social media platforms. If you want to mix it up with a bunch of liberal trolls, then take a look at my social media because they come after me. And it's
they do.
It's an old Air Force saying that if you're taking flack, that must mean you're over the target. So I embrace that when the liberals troll me on social media. But go in there and mix it up with them a little bit on social media.
I've seen a few of them, and I have poked the bear.
Good.
Yeah.
It's just my name at Frank LaRose on all the different platforms.
Yep. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us, and good luck on your race.
My honor.
We'll be rooting for you.
Thanks, guys. God bless.
Thank you.
As well. Thank you.
Mike, we've now been joined by our current state auditor, Keith Fabor. Sir, how are you?
We've been blessed by.
Yes, we are blessed.
Our, auditor Keith Fabor.
How are you?
I am great. It's a wonderful day here in Union County.
Now, I want everybody to get excited. How much money have you saved in your role for the state of Ohio?
The billions. When we talk about particularly identifying the waste, fraud, and abuse that occurred in pandemic unemployment, that tune alone is in the billions of dollars. We were the first state auditor's office in the country to identify that problem. By getting out in front of that, we were able to hopefully get them to change the way they were operating, put controls back in place. California, by contrast, is about $30 billion in losses. Ohio's only about $6. Now, when I say only about $6 billion, everybody's eyes ought to roll back in the back of their head and go, "What the heck?"
That's crazy. It's nuts.
But we think that it would have been much, much larger had we not acted and gotten the Job and Family Services folks to crack down and start actually doing their job.
So I want to touch on an ugly subject that you may or may not be able to answer this question, but it's since the budget came out in June, one of the biggest complaints is the passage of using the $600 million in unclaimed funds account for the Browns' new stadium. Now, is it legal to take that unclaimed funds?
I think it is. I think the legislature acted the way they should have. Now, they did something in there without the legislature I wouldn't have been excited about. I don't like the achievement that after 10 years the monies go away. If they wanted to use that money that's there as a financing tool, they can certainly, the legislature has the authority to do tax incremental financing districts, which is effectively what they did. They're going to pay that back off the sales tax and the other tax revenue once that stadium's completed with a guarantee from the Haslams. But again, two things I would have looked at if I were actually in the legislature. I'm not. State auditor doesn't have anything to do with this, doesn't have any say in that. But the two things that we would have looked at is one, probably tried to make sure that the money after 10 years can always go back. If it's your money, you should always have a right to get that. I think that's a big deal. The second thing is look, if the Browns were to sell the stadium, I think Ohioans ought to be paid back, period. We ought to have a financial interest. If we're going to finance part of the stadium, we should have a financial interest in the stadium. But that's a different discussion. You elect the legislators to do that.
Right.
The state auditor doesn't get a say. And as auditor, my job is to catch people lying, stealing, and cheating with government money. We've now convicted 147 individuals for doing that.
Wow.
I actually personally prosecuted a lady in Lima about 2 weeks ago that we convicted of 7 felonies for taking government money and using it to influence an election.
Oh, wow.
7 felonies?
7 felonies.
Holy cow.
And so I actually
Wow.
went up and tried the case myself. I did grand jury and indicted her. Look, she's going to be sentenced here sometime soon. I think she's going to prison.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Crazy.
So
7 felonies.
a lot of people don't realize you are an attorney,
I am.
and you are now in campaign mode to be our next state attorney general.
There's a lot of similarities between what the auditor does and what the attorney general does. The attorney general gets jurisdiction over everybody's money, not just government money. We can catch people lying, stealing, and cheating and taking advantage of our elderly and people who are trying to. I'm surprised my phone hasn't rang with another scam call. We're going to try and go after those folks. We're going to try and shut down their exchanges when I'm attorney general. Dave Yost has done a good job. We're going to take that to another level. We're going to continue to do what we've done in the auditor's office and fight for individuals and keep people safe.
Well, yes, Dave Yost has done great. I'm a big fan of Dave Yost. There's a lot going on right now, and I don't want to get too much into hypotheticals, but what do you think the role of the Attorney General's office can do to improve situations like what we've seen just happen in Cincinnati last week?
Great question. In Ohio, the Attorney General's office generally doesn't have direct prosecutorial authority. I wish if we did, the simple answer would be as Attorney General, if the local prosecutors don't want to prosecute people like that, I would. But the advantage that you can do now as Attorney General, it's 2 things. One, you can certainly put task forces together to help the local prosecutors and the local sheriffs act. As Attorney General, you run the State Crime Lab. You also oversee OPATA, which certifies all the law enforcement entities. In that vein, we need to make sure we continue to strengthen the relationship that citizens have with law enforcement. Look, they keep us safe. They take care of our families. We need to have their backs when they need to have pressure. And remind me to talk about this silly notion of getting rid of qualified immunity.
Oh, yes.
If that gets on the ballot, I will lead the charge to try and kill it. But getting back to your question about places like Cincinnati, look, they need to elect prosecutors who are going to prosecute people who are doing bad things, period. We need to have confidence that our law enforcement are going to have our citizens' backs when people are being abused. Look, if the local community won't do it, I think you take those cases to the feds and let the feds charge those people with hate crimes and all of the other things that you have tools for. And that's where you can coordinate and do that as well. When you deal with an Attorney General's office, you also have the ability to do cross-border. So when things are going between counties, and certainly many of these criminal activities, particularly with the organized retail theft that we're seeing around, are going across borders. So people aren't just stealing in Columbus, they're going to Polaris, they're going to Delaware County. And I can tell you in Delaware County, you get a heck of a good prosecutor. She isn't going to let anything go by. And so being able to pull those things together and coordinate that as a task force, the Attorney General's office can do a lot in that regard.
Yeah, that's what's really frustrating is seeing how many of our local judges are just repeat offenders. Let them out, let them out, let them out. They don't care. It's like, is it just because it's not in your backyard? Is what I want to say to them.
Well, part of it is particularly in some of our urban core areas, we've got judges that are elected on progressive ideology.
Right.
And their view is that people aren't committing crimes, they're somehow oppressed. And it's almost like the person who's the victimizer is actually the victim. I think that's a crazy bit of logic, and we will continue to fight back against that. The fact of the matter is that we need to understand who the perpetrators of crime are. And if you're a criminal, you're a criminal. We're not going to be for you.
That's
So
excellent.
if anybody would like to help with your campaign, how can they do that?
The easiest is go to keithfabor.org, keithfabor.org. You can send me a personal email, keith@keithfabor.org. On our website there is actually a donate or a volunteer button. We are running an 88-county campaign. I'm honored to have the endorsement of a large swath of Ohio sheriffs already. And law enforcement and the prosecutors. We are running a campaign that says something simple. We're going to back the blue. We're going to get behind law enforcement, and I'm honored to have them behind me. One of the things I mentioned I wanted to talk about just briefly is this
Yes.
silly constitutional amendment that's being circulated. If somebody comes up to you and wants you to sign a petition, tell them, let me read it. Let me understand what this is before you sign anything. I always
Agreed.
encourage people just to say no. But in the end, if they ask you to sign this about this concept for qualified immunity, that's essentially a protection that our law enforcement and prosecutors have, that when they're within the law. If they're outside the law, they don't have immunity. But when they're within the law, they can't be sued and risk their house, their family, their future, their fortunes just because somebody doesn't like what they did. The fact of the matter is we need to back our law enforcement. You will see the number of people willing to be police or even firefighters go down dramatically if they lose qualified immunity, because the ability to get sued, and you can sue somebody for anything. I always tell there's a difference between being sued and somebody having a chance to win. But if you're sued, you have to defend yourself. You have to spend your resources and let justice prevail.
You could lose everything for fighting a fire. You could lose everything for protecting a citizen.
Yeah.
So it's
It
ridiculous.
is absolutely crazy. If it gets on the ballot, we will fight that with every fiber of our being, because it is such bad public policy that we will lose the ability, and we will essentially say Ohioans aren't having our police and firefighters' backs. We can't let that happen. And so if that gets on the ballot, we will fight it, and hopefully we don't put it on the ballot. We all say no.
Well, and like you said, a lot of people need to understand that if a police officer is a bad actor or just
That's right.
does something bad one time,
Right.
if it's criminal, they are going to be prosecuted.
That's right.
Having the qualified immunity does not protect them from justice.
It does not. It does nothing to protect them on criminal charges, and candidly, it doesn't do anything to protect the city or other places if, in fact, they're operating in the scope of their authority. So you can, if they harm you or they do something they're not supposed, you can still get compensated. They just don't have to worry about putting their personal, while they're acting within the scope of their responsibilities. If they're doing something illegal, they're not in the scope of their responsibilities. They don't have that protection as
Exactly.
it is. But I go back to, it's just this simple. When we protect and back up the people who are keeping our families safe, more people are going to want to do it. They're going to do it a better job. Nobody hates a bad cop better than a good cop.
Exactly.
I grew up in a law enforcement household. I can tell you that my dad didn't like people to go outside their authority. He never liked cops not being good cops. And frankly, he ended up being a captain. And, he had to discipline people who went outside their authority and had to fire people. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Right.
We have a lot of really good police and firefighters out there. As Attorney General, I'll have their back because, frankly, we need to have their back to keep our families and communities
Yes, we
safe.
do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, KeithFabor.com. Is it Keith.Faber?
KeithFabor.org or KeithFabor.com. Either one goes to our website. First name, last name at the website. Get out there. Tell us your thoughts. We continue to catch people lying, cheating, and stealing with government money. A week doesn't go by that my staff don't get another claim in. The other thing, someday we'll come back and talk about cyber fraud. It is the number one threat.
Yeah.
It is the number one threat to government in Ohio. We lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in cyber fraud in government across the state every single week. And that's another good conversation for your listeners because, frankly, they're also hitting individuals.
Yes.
How many saw the Beekeeper movie out there?
Beekeeper? I
Yeah,
have
the
not seen
Beekeeper.
that.
It's one of those Jason Statham movies. There's a high
I
body
saw
count.
the Bee Gees, and I
know.
saw.
Oh, geez.
Now you're dating yourself. The Bee Gees.
I know. I'm sorry. What are you gonna do?
Who's the Bee Gees? I don't know.
Who's
So-
the Bee Gees? Come on. What?
State Auditor Keith Faber.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
was-
we're
What on?
Yeah, sir, we thank you so much for
Thank you
all
very
your
much.
hard work.
thanks.
We wish you luck in your race for Attorney General. Thank you for sitting down with us today.
Thank you very much.
And keep telling the Second Amendment story.
Absolutely.
Always.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Always.
Take care.
Thank you.
Sitting with us now is Chairman of the Ohio Republican Party, Alex Triantafilou. Did I say it right?
Triantafilou, but close enough.
I've been
Triantafilou.
practicing. Everybody just calls him Alex T.
Alex T.
Sir.
That's what I do. Is just Alex T.
Yeah,
Alex T.
everybody knows who that is. No problem, sir. Thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Beautiful day here in Middle Ohio, and great to be with all of you.
Yes. So a lot of people don't understand. So tell us, what is your role as chairman?
Well, I'm chairman of the Ohio Republican Party, and I think our primary responsibility is to elect Republicans up and down the ballot. I was a county chairman for a long time, a state chairman a little bit more than 2 years, and I mean, if we had a mission statement, it's to be part of winning elections from the White House to the local courthouse, and everything in between. So, our day-to-day obligations here are to manage data, talk to campaigns, pull together fundraising strategies, raise money ourselves to accomplish our program. So we see our role as being part of a winning team here in Ohio. And, we've had a great run of success, and we hope to build upon that in 2026.
I know you work very hard. I see you at so many places, follow you on social media. You're just nonstop.
It just amazes me of how visible you are to the public and to everybody. And you're not afraid to talk to anyone. Anyone can come up and talk to you. And it amazes me, and I want to thank you personally for being so out front of the party.
Well, you're very kind to say that. And I got to tell you, it is... Guys, I know this is a long-form podcast, I guess, but this is from the heart for me. I love Republicans. I love the party. Even Republicans that are sometimes mad, I love them the most because they bring the most passion and the most energy. I'm at a place in my life where a guy named Triantafilou isn't running for office. This is the way that I want to make a difference for our movement. So I'm excited. I appreciate the kind words. It's a labor of love. My wonderful wife, Jennifer, who was standing beside me a minute ago, and we have one child. He's 26. He's, well on his way in life, so it's just us. And a couple years ago, when I decided to embark down this path, we talked about me being gone and being on the road. And with her support, I've been able to get around and been to a lot of events and just being and showing folks that the Republican Party isn't a smoke-filled room full of people. It's all of us working together. Grassroots, business community, every aspect of it. Donald Trump has brought the party together in an amazing way. I mean, whatever sort of facet you see yourself within, whatever sect of the Republican Party you think you're a part of, Donald Trump has delivered for you. And I think that has brought us together. And I love to do that. And candidly, at the end of the day, a long-winded answer here, but I just love to win elections. And Donald Trump has shown us as Republicans how to win. So I just love being a part of that team. But thank you again for your kind words.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that was. I'm glad we're recording that because that was amazing. I need that as a soundbite for the future. That's like conservative porn right there.
Thank you.
I like to touch on one thing, Lisa. You mentioned your wife, and I've noticed it's very important to me. My son's raised; he's 40 years old. I'm the old guy in the room, I guess. But it's important that our spouses or our partners, boyfriend, girlfriend, you have to have that support at home in order to be out. It takes a group of people, and I don't understand the other side. They're all individuals, but I appreciate you recognizing your wife. I know there's a lot of strong females out there that their husbands sit and support them while they're out in front, and but it is a family oriented. The party is a family event.
It is.
Well, and I couldn't agree more with that. On the way up here, I was about 2.5 hours up from Cincinnati today. We listened to Vice President Vance on the Ruthless podcast. And I would encourage your listeners, I know who learn a lot about politics from this broadcast, to tune in to that one as well. And the reason I bring that up is J.D. Vance talked about having his 3 children and raising them in the vice president's residence at the Naval Observatory. And he was out on a golf cart catching lightning bugs, right? And I looked at Jen on the way up here and I said, he's so normal, right? Yeah. But having Usha and that support is just, again, you're so right. Any of us who've done this and made a commitment to this, if you don't have that, really you probably shouldn't do it because then you're miserable. If your spouse is miserable, then you're going to go home and be the same way, or your partner is. But I agree.
Or you're going to be at the event and be miserable because you know you're going to get grief.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about Republicans who get mad at you.
Yeah.
So I've had, being a member of Central Committee and being an officer in the Franklin County Republican Party, I've had a lot of people question, Why did the ORP endorse Vivek Ramaswamy so soon?
Yeah. So it was unusual. There's no question about it. You know, Lisa, you may know this. I was a county chairman for about 15 years, and we really hardly ever endorsed pre-primary. I mean, it was, when I say hardly ever, you know, in a big city like Cincinnati or Columbus, you know, lots of offices, township trustees, village councils, et cetera. We were not a group that endorsed. So when I came to Columbus, I realized that half or more than half of the committee is in favor of doing that early endorsement. So, but why Vivek? Well, several things. There are four major factors as I've identified them. Number one, he's an excellent, outstanding fundraiser. We've all seen that already with nearly $10 million. That'll mean strength at the ballot box. Number two, grassroots energy, the likes of which I've not seen in Ohio politics. I have marveled at Vivek Ramaswamy filling up Lincoln Day dinners in every corner of this state. Okay. Number three, clearly a person who understands and communicates the conservative message as well as anybody. And by the way, that also means he's got a huge lead in the polls, all of them, the internal ones, the Bowling Green one. But the final and most important one is he received an endorsement, frankly, far more important than ours. He received the most coveted endorsement in modern American political history. He got the early endorsement of President Donald Trump. And once we saw that endorsement come in, I mean, my committee in an almost overwhelming fashion said, let's go ahead and help Vivek unite this party early. That's ultimately the answer as to how that came about. And it was, you know, again, primarily when President Trump said we're in, we're in. But again, we're going to be considering future endorsements. I don't know where that's going. I don't want to predict anything about this. And I know there is a school of thought, and I do hear about it from folks who say, why is the party sticking its nose in this thing? And again, there are two arguments on that, and we'll continue to wage that battle internally.
Yeah, we're getting that at the county level too, and I think we've decided we're just going to wait until all petitions are in February and go from there. A lot of people don't understand the process of endorsing. So we have, you know, your local county central committee, and then we have the state central committee. Tell us a little bit about that, because a lot of people don't understand. You know, there's one man, there's one woman. How are those districts? Just give us a little brief explanation about that.
Sure. So the State Central Committee of the Republican Party is the governing body of the Ohio Republican Party. It consists of 66 people. It is a man and a woman for every Senate district in Ohio. So there are 33 senators, state senators in Ohio. By the way, a supermajority of Senate are Republicans. But each one of those Senate districts elects a man and a woman. They come together to form the State Central Committee of Ohio. That committee elects me and the other leadership of the state party. So that's basically the system. Now, what I tell folks is, especially people who aren't day-to-day involved in this business, I tell them, you remember when you go to the ballot sometimes and it's a primary ballot, and we all know turnout's way low, and you get to the very end and there's some race you've never heard of, you know. Now, we all live in this business, so we know what central committees are, but to your rank and file voters, sometimes they get to the bottom. You know, in Hamilton County, for instance, we have the Educational Services Commission. Everybody calls and asks about what that is, right? Mm-hmm. At least people that want to get it right. But I mean, that's, if you're just a listener, not sort of attuned to day-to-day how this thing works, every 2 years, and now soon to be every 4 years, on the ballot, at the close of your ballot, in the primary, in the even years, is that State Central Committee member. That's a very important election, very important to all of us, very important to me. I served on that committee. So that's the structure of the party. And by the way, all codified under state law, and you know, we have a set of bylaws that we have to live by. So that's how that works. And then you asked about the endorsement. Cut me off. Just give me a high sign if I should stop. But the endorsement process actually requires, if there's going to be an endorsement of a non-incumbent, 2/3 of those 66. So that's 44 members. So again, it requires a supermajority of 2/3 before we move forward with endorsement. So endorsements for non-incumbent candidates are not easy, and you have to have a strong 2/3 majority of that committee to accomplish an endorsement.
That makes it much simpler. So if anybody would like to run for State Central Committee, I know the County Central Committee, we're on the same election cycle. So our election is actually next May. If somebody would like to run to be on State Central, what do they need to do?
They just need to go to their Board of Elections and pull a petition and get it properly signed and verified and properly filed, and they can be on the ballot as well.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
And then I encourage our listeners to find out who their state central committee representative is and go meet and talk to them. And if you're not happy with what they're doing, run against them or find somebody to, or support them if you.
That's right. And the website is ohiogop.org. There's a map. You can, you roll the mouse over your county, and it should spit back your state central committee member, as well as your county chair as well. So that's a ready resource for people who want to know who their state central committee person is.
Anything exciting coming up in the near future? I know this election cycle, it's school boards, it's township trustees. Jim is running again.
Yes.
He's a township trustee. I know we're kind of quiet right now, but
listen, I'm coming up from Cincinnati. Cincinnati has made national news this week. I'm sure you all have seen this. And it really, the timing, it's been awful for the city and awful for public safety. And this is what happens when you let the far left Democrats control the levers of power. That's what's happening in Cincinnati. You got a left-wing prosecutor, left-wing mayor. The judges let everybody just roll back into the streets. 2 floors of the jail are largely empty. Why do I talk about that? Because this is a year where the municipal elections are happening. Like Jim knows, these elections matter. It may not be as sexy as voting for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance or Bernie Moreno, or next year voting for Vivek Ramaswamy. But these elections matter a great deal to the safety of your citizens, to the governance in your community, how much local tax levies, how much money you're going to pay on your local tax levies. So this is a huge year, really, in my mind, and people need to get out. That's the main message from us this year, and that is get out and vote. And just because it's quote, and I air quote, an off year. No, you need to turn out, and you need to go cast your vote. Learn who your good conservatives are and vote for them.
Right.
And it's important that everybody, not just Cincinnati, but all the 3 C's in Ohio, Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati, they're all, in my opinion, they're all facing the same problem up and down the ticket. Is you've got left-wing prosecutors, left-wing mayors, left-wing judges that are just absolutely destroying Ohio. And that's why it's important that as conservatives that we get out and push the vote. I know a lot of people don't want to get out and vote in these off years, but this is the groundwork. This is the groundwork for the future.
And the one thing people need to understand is at the local judicial level, you're not going to see an R or a D by their name. So where do you recommend people go to find out who those conservative judicial candidates are?
They should start at their county GOP website. I would hope that a lot of our counties, and the staff could tell you more closely where those are, but where those slate cards would be. But I would be looking very closely at your county GOP website. Reach out to your county Republican Party organization, because that's where endorsements are made at the county and local level. We at the state. Now, we'll support candidates with mail and other things as we get and work closely with the county parties, but that's the best place to get your list of local electeds. And I would just urge you to reach out to your county GOP. The chairman for your county Republican Party is on our website at ohiogop.org. At the end of the day, you can call the Board of Elections as well and see what information they have, or go to their website as well.
Wonderful. Alex T., thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us. We appreciate your time.
It's been a privilege.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.